So picture this. It's Tuesday morning, it's 8 a.m. Two accounting clerks and the controller sit down to start their day. Coffee's in hand, they log into the accounting system and are met with random errors and just a generally very slow response. Not down, but it's not right either. So after a few minutes, things seem to work, then they don't. So they wait, check email, they refill the coffee, chat for a minute, and try again. No one calls IT because it just doesn't feel worth it. After all, nothing's actually broken. It's just slow and a little inconsistent. By mid-morning, everything looks back to normal. Or maybe that early morning was the normal. No outage, no incident, no record of it ever happening at all. Just three people who lost focus, lost time, and started their day frustrated. Again. And at this point, they become numb to it. So the question to ask isn't whether something broke. The question is, what did that actually cost the business? Now, this situation's not all that unusual. It's a pattern most companies don't measure, don't track, and don't even talk about. And it's one of the primary ways financial risk quietly shows up in otherwise stable environments. I'm Jeff, and in working with manufacturing environments, this pattern kept showing up even when everything looked stable. And at Andromeda, we started calling them micro-outages. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So first up, let's be clear about what we're talking about and what we're not talking about. So what are micro-outages? They are short interruptions. Sometimes they're inconsistent. Sometimes they're recurring over and over again. Definitely technology-related frustrations. They slow work down. They interrupt flow. They force people to wait around and work around. Generally, they've been happening for so long, people just start to think they're normal. Here's what they're not. They're not outages. They're not incidents. They're not emergencies, showstoppers. They're nothing that triggers alarms, or in the old days, pagers if you're as old as I am. And there's definitely no big giant post-mortem that happens. Most organizations are really good at tracking big incidents, but they're very bad at seeing interruptions. Incidents are binary. They're up, they're down, they're big, they're small. But interruptions live in the gray, the slow, flaky, inconsistent, and annoying. That gray is where the blind spots live. Now, nobody ignores these on purpose, right? But people don't escalate it because the issue just usually resolves itself. Stopping to report it feels more disruptive than just pushing through. It just doesn't feel serious enough. So what happens is the organization silently trades visibility for momentum. And the absence of these giant alarm bells going off creates the illusion of stability. Nothing lights up on a dashboard, nothing shows up in reports. So leadership concludes things are fine. But cost doesn't require big alarms for the cost to exist. Now, micro outages, they don't show up as technical failures. They show up as lost time, lost focus, and lost efficiency. And because they're never labeled as problems, they never get treated for what they are, which is financial risk. Now, micro outages, they don't feel expensive because they don't look expensive. There's no invoice, there's no downtime report, and there's no single moment that demands someone's attention. But cost doesn't show up all at once. It accumulates slowly over time, but it is there. Now, lost time is the obvious piece here, right? But it's not just minutes on a clock that we're talking about. Micro outages do other things. They break concentration, they force task switching, they delay dependent work, and they compress already full days for people that are just already way too busy. Here's the reality. A 5-minute interruption rarely costs 5 minutes, but it does cost momentum. And over time, here's the big one, it costs patience. And good people don't leave because of one big failure. Good people leave because of constant friction, slow starts, broken flow, and the feeling that getting real work done is just harder than it should be and getting a little harder every day. Now, this frustration never shows up in a report, but it does show up in employee turnover, employee disengagement, and burnout. Those eventually will show up. Now, from a financial perspective, here's how they show up. They show up as paid labor that isn't producing output, work that gets pushed later into the day or the week, or in some cases, the month, overtime and extra work that just feels unavoidable, and just margin erosion that nobody can quite explain. It's not because people aren't working, but because work is constantly being restarted. These costs, they don't land in an IT report, but where they do land is in payroll, missed timings and deadlines, slower close cycles, and just generally lower throughput throughout the organization. And that means they get accepted as normal operating friction instead of being recognized for what they are, which is risk. Now, micro outages, they don't announce themselves as failures. They just quietly tax the business every day, day after day after day. And because they're invisible, leadership ends up underwriting that cost without ever realizing it. And that is financial risk. Now, here's what's interesting about these micro outages. This isn't the problem caused by incompetence, not at all. It's a problem caused by normal human behavior inside well-run organizations just like yours. I'm going to give you 5 reasons that these things happen. Reason number 1, people compensate. Most teams don't stop when something is slow or flaky. They just push on through. They retry, they work around, they move on to another task. They make it work. And frankly, that resilience is kind of admirable. However, it also hides the cost. Reason number 2, momentum beats visibility. Escalating takes time, reporting takes time, calling somebody takes time, time they don't have. Instead, they make the rational trade. I'll just get through it instead of I'm going to stop and document this. And the organization now has silently traded visibility for momentum. All right, reason number 3 on why these things happen. Metrics reward the wrong things. So you'll see dashboards. Most dashboards will track things like uptime, outages, ticket volume, major incidents. But what they don't track is friction, interruptions, restart time, and the cumulative delay that builds up behind all that. So leadership gets reassuring signals, even while that cost is silently accumulating right underneath all of it. All right, reason number 4, friction becomes accepted. Over time, everyone adapts. We are an adaptable species. Slow becomes normal, workarounds become normal, and frustration becomes normal. And the organization completely stops noticing the drag. All right, last one, reason number 5, nobody owns the gray zone. And micro outages live between the categories in the gray zone. They're not big enough for IT escalation, they're not visible enough for finance, and they're not clean enough for the operations team to see them. So what happens? They persist. Why? Because they belong to everyone and they belong to no one. And this is why micro outages are so expensive. Not because they're dramatic, but because they're invisible, they're normalized, and they're unmanaged. And that's the persistence problem with it. Now, the answer isn't perfection. We're never looking for perfect. But the goal is not to eliminate every interruption, right? We live in the real world. But the goal is to stop flying blind so that we can start seeing these things. Because better starts with visibility. Once you can start seeing them, you can do something about it. Now, most organizations manage anything they can label as an incident. Downtime, production stops, that kind of thing. But micro outages require you to use a little bit of a different lens. Not the did something break question, but rather where is friction quietly accumulating cost? And that's exposure-based thinking. Now, here, CFOs and executives do not need more technical detail. I'm confident there's nobody on watching this that wants more technical detail in their life. But what you do need is some better questions to ask. Questions like, where are people losing time every day without reporting it? What work is constantly being restarted or delayed? Where are the teams compensating with manual workarounds and band-aids and duct tape patches? Lastly, what feels normal that really shouldn't? That normal that we just accept. And those are all financial risk questions that you can start asking today. All right, so here's what better actually starts to look like. You start measuring interruption patterns, not just outages, treating friction as an operational exposure, surfacing those hidden costs before they rise to the level of an obvious big failure. And lastly, reducing the drag that just frustrates your good people. It just takes some management. It's not magic. Don't need a magic wand. We just need to start seeing them so we can start managing it. So when you start seeing these micro outages clearly, you don't just improve IT. What you do is reduce financial leakage, improve execution, and then lower risk across the whole entire business. So let me bring this back to the main point. Micro outages, they're not outages at all. They aren't emergencies. They aren't headline events. They're just small interruptions that quietly accumulate real cost. The absence of big alarms going off is what creates that illusion of stability. But the cost doesn't require alarms to exist. If you're only measuring incidents, you're missing the exposure that's created with this. So again, the question isn't whether something broke. The question is, what did that actually cost the business? Now, the companies that manage risk best aren't the ones with zero problems, but they are the ones who see friction early, measure it honestly, and reduce it before it becomes a giant failure. And that is the financial risk conversation that we want to start having. Now, when you're done watching this, I have a challenge for you. I want you to go to your organization, get with your teams, start looking around to see what isn't being measured. Ask your team questions like, where are we losing time that nobody reports? Where does work feel harder than it should? And what have we accepted as normal that probably isn't? Or at the very least, that we shouldn't accept. You don't need a new system. You don't need a big giant initiative. You just need to start noticing. Because the moment you can see it, now you can start managing it. So I'm hopeful that I provided some value to you today. I will offer you up if you have any questions on this or anything else IT or technology related. Just reach out to us. We are here to help. I appreciate it. Thank you.